Yesterday we were saying, with the practice of Satipatthana, we are purifying our mind, that is cultivating Citta Visuddhi, purity of mind. Then we are able to discern mind and body, that is realizing Ditthi Visuddhi, purity of views. And we come to understand that mind and body are not causeless, they are due to cause, and this cause also is due to relevancy of cause. So we understand relevancy of cause and relevancy of effect. In this way, we are able to cultivate knowledge in a clear-cut manner. Then we will be free of doubts. The reason is that we are understanding the basics of insight. Only when we are grounded in the basics of insight, we will be able to cultivate insight knowledge through the stages of path until we come to the maturity of the practice to realize path and fruition knowledge of the noble ones and realize Nibbana. In knowing clearly, we begin with the right understanding of Kamma as one's own property, Kamma Sakata Samadhi. And then we are able to cultivate Jhana Samadhi, that is right view of Jhana, then Vipassana Samadhi, that is cultivating insight knowledge. We realize this right view of insight. And we also touch on this subject, the three Samadhi, namely Megha Samadhi, the right understanding of path, Phala Samadhi, right understanding of fruition, and the right understanding of review, Vishvakana Samadhi. These three right views are not to be purposely cultivated or developed. If we are grounded in the first of the right view, namely Kamma Sakata Samadhi, right view of Kamma as one's own property, we walk the path of Jnana, then we will be fulfilled with these things until we are able to reach this three Samadhi. They will be fulfilled automatically, as we have discussed yesterday. And also we have discussed the three characteristics at one time, namely Sabhava Lakkhana, the natural or specific characteristic, and Sankata Lakkhana, the timely characteristic, and Samanya Lakkhana, the common or universal characteristic. As the saying goes, only when you note at the very moment you will see the natural characteristic, Sabhava. Only when you see this, you come to see the Sankata Lakkhana. That is, knowing when you are discerning mind and body and cause and effect. We are not coming to this stage as yet. Only when we see the dissolving part, that is in the Sankata language, in the Sankata Lakkhana, there are three parts, namely arising, aging, and dissolution. Only when we come to the dissolution of the object, seeing the dissolution of the object noted, we will be able to understand the impermanent nature of the object. Then we are set to cultivate anicca anupassana, the contemplation of impermanence, that is insight knowledge. Today we shall discuss on this point. With the knowledge to know Sabhava Lakkhana, that is natural or individual characteristic, it is not just one thing, you know in different stages. That is, firstly, roughly, you discern mind and body, and also with a stepped up knowledge, you will know roughly cause and effect. At this stage, you are not cultivating insight knowledge as yet. But of course, you are seeing the basics for insight knowledge. So in these two kinds of preliminary knowledges, you may observe the Sankata Lakkhana, the timely characteristic, that is the characteristic of arising, aging and dissolution, or the beginning, middle and the end, at the moment of discerning mind and body. Out of these three parts, or three periods, beginning, middle and end, you know only the middle part of it, which is most obvious. This goes without saying that when you note an arising object, you will not observe the beginning and the end of that object. Instead, you will only observe the middle part of that. Let us say when you are watching the abdomen and noting rising, as the rising pops up, the object pops up, you will not observe the beginning and the end of that. You will only observe the most obvious part, that is the middle part of it, that is observing the three sensations of stiffness, tension and movement. Those are most obvious. So too in the falling, when you are noting falling, you will not be able to catch up, you will not be able to note or observe the middle and the end of it. You will only observe the middle part of it. Same thing goes with other objects as you note. You will not observe the middle and the end of these objects. You will only observe the middle part of it. That is when you are discerning mind and body. You are knowing the Sabhava Lakkhana, the natural phenomena, the intrinsic nature of the objects only roughly. And as for Sankata Lakkhana, the timely characteristic, that is the characteristic of knowing the beginning, middle and the end, you are knowing only the middle part of it. So out of these three parts of an object, you observe the middle part of it in the beginning. And at this moment of knowing mind and body, as you're observing these things, as the noting mind is connected with the object closer and closer, you will see these objects more and more obvious, clearly. And to what extent would you see these objects? You will come to know the beginning of that object. You will begin to know that. You will begin to know the beginning of that object. For instance, when you are noting rising, you will come to know the beginning and the middle part of the rising. And when you note falling, you will observe the beginning and the middle part of falling. Same thing goes with other objects. As you note, you will only observe the beginning and the middle part. When you are noting especially sensations, especially itchy sensations, you are noting itchy as itch. Before this itchy feeling disappears, another itchy feeling will come up. And while you are noting it, before it comes to an end, another itchy sensation will rise up. In this way, one object after another will come up to be noted. Before this present object goes away or disappears, another object is arising for you to note. In this way, when you are observing, cultivating this knowledge of mind and body and cause and effect, you will come to observe the middle, the beginning part as well, in addition to the middle part. And as you are able to cultivate knowledge of conditionality, every object that you note will be observed in the beginning and the middle of it, out of the three objects. Out of the three objects, the beginning and the middle parts will be most obvious. These things will become obvious without you purposely looking for them. They will become obvious in the course of the practice, as a matter of course, as you practice mindfulness and as you are able to connect with the object closer and closer. And then this arising and these things are peññati, that is the beginning, middle and end, are the conceptual things, and not the paramatthas, not the ultimate things. However, when you observe the middle and the beginning and the middle part of three parts, you are not observing, because you are not observing the end part of it, you are not seeing this anicca lakkhana, that is the characteristic of impermanence as yet. That means you are not cultivating insight knowledge as yet. However, you are building up momentum. You are trying to build up this momentum in order to cultivate insight knowledge. If you continue to practice, as you are able to exert more energy, that is your driving force of noting mind, driving force to drive a noting mind towards the object becomes stronger and stronger. As you exert energy, your mindfulness also will be more sustained on the object of attention. Thus, your Khanika Samadhi, momentary concentration, will also deepen. And as much as your noting mind is connected with the object, you will come to see the end part of the object, besides seeing the beginning and the middle part. So, for instance, when you are noting rising, you will observe not only the beginning and ending, you will observe the end part of rising. The same thing with falling and other objects, if you are very careful. And for those dedicated yogis, they will observe the object in waves or in segments. And in this way they will observe the beginning of the object and the dissolution of that object. You might see the 3 or 4 or 5 parts of the object. The same thing with the sensations. As your viriya is strong, you will be seeing the end part of the sensation. For instance, when you are noting itch, you will observe the end of that itch, of that sensation. And not only the beginning and the middle, but you will observe the end of the sensation. And then you will come to a conclusion that all objects noted arise and pass away, they are impermanent. That happens only when your mindfulness is sustained on the object of attention. And this is the beginning of insight. As the saying goes, only when you note at the very moment, you will see the natural characteristic. So when you are noting rising and falling, with the practice of Satipatthana, with applying energetic aim, sustaining mindfulness, and deepening this Khanika Samadhi, momentary concentration. And as the momentary concentration becomes strong, you are bound to see these natural characteristics or natural phenomena very clearly. That's why it is said that only when you see the natural characteristic very closely will you see the timely characteristic, Sankata Lakkhana, that is seeing beginning, middle and the end. First of all, you see the middle part of that. Then we will come to see later the beginning part of that. Then later the end part of it. Not to look at them, not to look for them purposely, but they will become obvious automatically. Hence, only when you see natural characteristic, you will observe the Sankata Lakkhana, this which is the Vipassana saying. In this way, you see the object, the beginning part of the object, then the aging part for an instant, and then the dissolution part. At this insight knowledge, beginning of this insight knowledge, you will see the end part of the object, besides seeing the beginning and the middle part, and they will become obvious automatically. Not to look carefully, not to look purposely. Otherwise, if you look purposely, you'll be wasting time and energy. So, the Venerable Mahadisaro has instructed us not to look for these beginning, middle, and the end part of these objects. They are bound; they will be observed automatically, instead of looking for them purposely. If you look for them purposely, you'll be wasting time and energy, and at the same time, if you say you have seen it, it will be just fantasy or imagination. And some yogis would report soon after they have started meditation. They would report that they have seen or they saw the end part of the object, which is probably from fantasy or imagination, not the real knowledge. This will be understood by the meditation teachers. And in this way you come to see the natural characteristic of the object noted, that is the natural phenomena. Then you come to observe the timely characteristic, that is the beginning, middle and the end, or the arising, genesis and dissolving. In this way, first you try to observe the nature of the object. For instance, in the material aspect, materialities are made up of these elements, such as the hardness. It has the nature of hardness, softness, cohesion, solidity, heat, cold, warm, stiffness, tension, movement. All these things are the characteristic of the materiality, of the nature of matter or materiality in a general way. And as regards the mental part, the nature of the mental part consists of seeing consciousness, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, thinking. All these things are known as sabhava, natural phenomena. Natural phenomena pertaining to the mind and the body, or pertaining to the material and mental aspects. These are objects to be noted, and not the timely characteristic, that is, not to note the beginning, middle and the end, or the arising, passing and dissolving purposely. So they are the timely characteristic, that is beginning, middle and the end, or arising, aging and dissolving, are concepts, conceptual things, not the real things, known as panyattis. So when you note this natural phenomena, that is sabhava, you come to observe these concepts automatically. They will be observed as a matter of course, in the course of the practice, namely the beginning, middle and the end part of the object, or the arising, aging and dissolving part of the object. They are not the things to be noted, and this has to be understood very carefully. What you know, what you are to note are the natural phenomena, the natural characteristic. And then as you observe these things in the course of the practice, you will observe the beginning, middle, and the end of that object, three parts of the object, or the arising, aging, and dissolving of the object, of each object. That's why it is said in this saying of vipassana practice, only when you observe sabhava, you will observe sankata. That is, only when you observe natural phenomena, you will observe the three parts of that object. They are not to be the latter is not to be purposely noted, looked for. They will be observed. They become obvious automatically. And then, only when you observe the three parts, that is Sankara Lakkhana, you will observe the common characteristics known as Samanya Lakkhana, or universal characteristics. These mind-body objects, there's matter and material and mental things, objects, either in yourself or in others, they are subject to common characteristics. That is, they are subject to destruction, they are impermanent, and what is impermanent? When you know impermanent, this is you are seeing the characteristic of impermanence, anicca lakkhana. This is common to all material and mental things. That means they are universal. That means the nature of impermanence is universal or common to all mind and body, mind and matter. If it is impermanent, it cannot be satisfactory. For instance, you have a bottle, a fragile thing, a glass or a bottle. Because it is fragile, it can break. Even before it breaks, because it is breakable, it is not satisfactory. It is not because it is impermanent. Although it is not breaking at the present time, because it is breakable, that's why it is not satisfactory. It cannot be satisfactory. That is dukkha lakkhana, the satisfactory of suffering or pain or unsatisfactoriness. This is also common to all objects, whether it is mental objects or physical objects. And then also, what is impermanent and what is unsatisfactory cannot be self or soul. That means they arise and happen at their will, not at your will. They are ungovernable, uncontrollable. They have no self or soul. They are not atta. They are mere process. And this nature, this characteristic is common or universal to all objects, whether they are mind objects or material objects. This is known as Samanya Lakkhana, the universal or common characteristic. As is said in this expression, Samanasa Bhavo Samanya Lakkhana. Because it is common to all. Bhava, it happens in this way, it is happening in this way, it is the nature of being common to all, it is known as common characteristic in Pali, Samanya Lakkhana. Hence, when you observe the three parts of an object, you come to observe the common characteristic as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. At this stage of observing the three characteristics, in this case the characteristic of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness and selflessness, you are said to have seen already the natural phenomena, that is the Bhava Lakkhana, with individual characteristics or natural qualities. Then you also, after seeing this natural phenomena, you see the timely characteristic, that is the beginning, middle and the part or the arising, genesis and dissolution of the objects noted, and later the universal or common characteristic of impermanent, unsatisfactoriness and selflessness. In this way, you observe the three characteristics, Sabhava, Sangata and Samanya. And in this way, you observe the three, again this is three, we call three characteristics again. It is anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanent, unsatisfactoriness and selflessness of the mind body, which are subject to conditionality, cause and effect. And you come to observe, when you come to observe the universal characteristic or common characteristic as impermanent, unsatisfactoriness and selfless of these objects noted, you are said to be cultivating insight knowledge, vipassana jnana. And vipassana or vipassana jnana is described as the knowledge of the variety of objects, the characteristic in a variety of characteristics such as impermanent, unsatisfactoriness and selflessness. These are the variety of characteristics of these mind-body objects which are subject to cause and condition. And you, knowing this is known as vipassana jnana, insight knowledge. And such kind of knowledge is not cultivated through your imaginations or thoughts or fantasies. And this has to be understood. In the body, many these natural phenomena, you observe one of them, that is, you observe one sabhava, natural phenomena, and that very moment, suppose you see the dissolving part, the dissolution of that object, then you will conclude that this is impermanent. You are knowing the impermanent nature of the object, such as cultivating a knowledge, kind of insight knowledge, known as anicca nupassana jnana, knowledge of the contemplation of impermanence. And this kind of knowledge is not through fantasies or imaginations, but from your own experience. And it is said that by knowing one characteristic, you know other characteristics at once, automatically. For instance, you observe the impermanent nature of the object by noting the object and observing the arising and passing away, and you observe either you observe impermanent nature of the object, or the unsatisfactory nature of the object, or the selfless nature of the object. If you observe one of these characteristics, one of these things, then you observe other three things automatically. And at times you may be observing the arising and passing away of the object. Then you are said to be knowing other characteristics as well, that is unsatisfactoriness and selflessness. At another time you may be observing the unsatisfactory or painful nature of the object. Then you are said to be knowing other objects as well. It is by knowing dukkha lakkhana, the characteristic of unsatisfactoriness, you come to know other two characteristics. And at another time, you may be observing just the process of the object, the just process and nothing else. For instance, the objects, either you know the object, either you know the material object or physical object or mental object, you are seeing only the process. It's just the process and nothing else. It is knowing the anatta lakkhana, the nature of selflessness. Especially at the knowledge of bhanga jnana, that is the knowledge of dissolution. Observing only the dissolving part of the object noted, whether it is the noted object or the noting mind. You will observe only the dissolving part of either object. That is just fleeting away, seeing the fleeting away of the objects. You are said to be observing, cultivating anatta nupassana jnana, that is knowledge of selflessness or soullessness, or knowledge of not self or not soul. Once you know this anatta lakkhana, you are said to be knowing other two lakkhanas as well, that is the impermanent characteristic or unsatisfactory characteristic at the same time. Hence it is said in the Vipassana saying, once you see one lakkhana, you will see other lakkhanas. And that is only when you cultivate insight knowledge. By noting every arising object in the body, whether it is a physical object or a mental object, once you know the arising and passing way of the object noted, you gain benefit. What are the benefits? That is, you be cultivating vipassana samadhi, the right view of insight. By knowing impermanence, once you know the impermanence, you will not hold the view of permanence. Although you may be holding the view of permanence originally, viewing that you are one and the same from youth to this old age, and you are just one solid thing, one whole thing, one complete thing, one permanent thing. Once you see the impermanent nature of the object, that is observing the arising and passing away of the object, this view of permanence is gone. Such is the immediate benefit. And the view of permanence is wrong. You come to know that the view of permanence is wrong, and you know now that things are impermanent. You are becoming free of the view of permanence. In that way, you will be able to overcome self-pride or self-conceit. And once you know the unsatisfactory nature of the object, dukkha characteristic, such as you will come to observe that things are not pleasurable, not satisfactory. Previously you might be thinking that seeing is good, pleasurable, hearing is pleasurable, and all these sensations, all these sense experiences are pleasurable. Now, every time you come to observe the unsatisfactory nature of the object, then you observe this sukha. You overcome the perception of pleasure, sukha. And when you see things as pleasurable, then you are bound to crave them and desire to possess them. Now you observe the unsatisfactory nature of objects, there will be no craving, the craving is gone. Now as you know the anatta characteristic, that is, things are arising on their own, at their will, not at your will, they are mere process. You come to possess the perception of not self, anatta sanya. That everything, you will no more hold the view of atta at this moment. Thus you will be overcoming the wrong view, ditthi. Previously you might be holding the view of the existence of atta, now this view is gone. Such is the benefit of the practice. This will be continued tomorrow.